It's Thursday again, and we are in the 1 o'clock hour, so you know that only means one thing, the Patriot hour. This is Sabrina Palmer Isaac. I'm your host today, and today we'll be discussing a very, very interesting topic. But before we get to that, I would like the two gentlemen who are joining me to introduce themselves, even though in my opinion, they need no introductions.
Good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Taylor. I'm just happy to be here on the Patriot Hour.
And good afternoon. My name is Jamell Robinson, and I guess it's good to have a chance to be on the other side of the mic and be a guest rather than ask all the questions. So yeah.
Okay, so today, gentlemen, we will be considering the idea of political dynasties here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Now, a political dynasty is defined as a family in which several members are involved in politics, particularly electoral politics. Members may be related by blood or by marriage. Often several generations or multiple siblings may be involved. So with that definition, Mr. Taylor, would you say that, in your opinion, do we have political dynasties in the Turks and Caicos?
Mrs. Isaac, I wrestle with this. From the time I got the invitation and Mr. Robinson told me what the subject was going to be. I mean, I wrestled with this. I slept. I got up. I said, but I don't think so. And when I saw and of course, looking at the system of government and what we have had, you're led to believe that perhaps maybe there might be political dynasties within the TCI, but when I stepped back, I had to and the reason being is that and I like how you framed it, because you said that whether it's a family, whether knitted by way of blood or in some relation whatsoever, or by marriage, as the case might be. While that might be true in some regard, I don't want to really liken it as a dynasty, because I believe that every person is given into his own decision as to which direction he or she wants to go in life. And sometimes, while you might have family members who might be in that field, the influence or someone actually pushing you to go into politics might not necessarily be those persons who are part of the system.
Okay. So,
and I can use myself as an experience. Okay. Yes.
All right, we'll get to that.
Yes.
So pretty much you're saying that your answer would be no. Your short answer would be no.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Jamell. I know that.
my turn now?
Yes. I know that you disagree, so I'm not even going to pose. I'm not even going to pose that question to you.
You can't just.
Okay. All right.
Well,
so, do you agree or do you disagree? Do we have political dynasties here in the Turks and Caicos?
My belief is that we actually do have political dynasties, particularly with your textbook definition in terms of the families being related or through marriage and chooks, even with the cousin thing, because I think just like many other jurisdictions throughout the region, like if you take the Byrds in Antigua, for example, where the first prime minister of Antigua being, I don't think Lester Byrd, but that might be the son.
No, Lester's the son.
Lester's the son. So V.C. Byrd and thing, he made the prime minister then several years or decades later, after he would have done a significant run from the Antiguan inception. Eventually his son came on, and it's not dynasties is not something that it doesn't just necessarily just happen, because it's kind of easy, because more often than not a child often aspires to be like their parents anyhow, or people you see in your environment. Because like for myself, I would have saw my father and my mother being heads of departments or permanent secretaries. So when I joined the government, I wanted to eventually become a permanent secretary. You know what I mean? So that was from what was in my environment, as well as seeing my grandfather being an entrepreneur, having his own store. So wanting to open my own business either before or somewhere in between. My work in government was something that I would have aspired to. So having political dynasties, that's kind of eventually natural. Now, let's say I gave the Antiguan example, but we have several political dynasties based on the textbook definition we've given.
And if you don't mind, you could, let us know in your opinion.
In my opinion, you have the Mizik crew, which you have the double S and single S. My father's from the Mizik family, double S in Cuba, my Aunt Cedar and Uncle Ad, which is by marriage, and several of their cousins. He being a member, and then the double S Mizik or single S Mizik, you have both Washington and Michael being chief ministers and premier of their Charles Mizik Sr. would have been a member of the state council. So again, that's where I'm pointing to they saw their father as a part of a representative, so that's something that they might have aspired to. And then of course across the aisle, you have the Taylors. Where you would say, Jakes McCartney's our only national hero. Jakes McCartney's mother was a Taylor, and then you have Derek Taylor. Then you have Dwayne Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah, you have Dwayne Taylor. So you got some Taylors, and again, for me, why I say dynasty, because even though you gave the textbook definition in terms of the relations, but I think it only comes about in a dynastic form for me when you have it being a particular set of persons dominating for a long time. So if one or two people, from a particular group, say, get in politics and they wane out and then make way for another set of people, then that's one thing. But it's another thing, even on another example, since I gave two on one side, I gave two on the other side. Even take a look at the Oswalds, where you would have had Louis Oswald for a number of years. Then you have his son as well as his daughter Sean and Cheryl, as well as his nephew Edwin finally stepping in, who's also a part of the Taylor dynasty because of his link to his grandmother being a Taylor. So you have those linkages, and it's natural. So even though you spoke for me and said I agreed that is such a thing.
I just wanted you to elaborate.
No problem. Yeah. So I think there is such a thing, particularly with the textbook definition you gave.
Listen, I looked up the word dynasty, and it is a powerful group or family that maintains this position for a considerable time. Right. But how I looked at it is, I look at it from the aspect of a heritage succession, if I could use that, right? And I give you one example. I don't know if you watched the movie Dallas, right?
Yeah, JR.
And
I would have watched it.
Right, and even let's just look at the political aspect. And even you would even look at religious dynasties, right? Where you would have, and I see those in some aspect being more, dynastic in approach. For example, you would have like a father who owns a church, then his son takes over, then the grandson takes over. I see that more, because what they're doing, I see that more of that dynastic heritage succession. Right. When I look at politics, I kind of see a little difference, because I'll give you one example. I remember when you look at it, you would find that Jags is the first chief minister. Jags' brother might not want to step up to the plate to lead after Jags, but perhaps maybe you would have. But there would be a succession of persons within that family line that would want to maintain that autonomy, where they would always try to have the numbers in place, to make sure that they keep a hold on to power, and so that the others cannot get in. For that reason, I can't play into it, simply because I understand even when I was going into politics, it had nothing to do with family. Okay. For me, it had, and not only that, the persons who I actually made contact with and who got me involved in the process, it wasn't, that family line that eventually I became connected to. Okay. So it's from that standpoint that I would say that, I can't see it like that. Okay.
Just to add on before you ask our next question. let's add on this a little bit more. I guess in terms of politics, the type of party politics would be fresh. We only 40 years, and the life of the world that's short. So these trends, they're trends now. So if at best one could say, okay, well maybe that is, maybe it ain't, even though 40 years is a good sample size to predict whether or not something is taking place. But if you think about the quote unquote hold on power, or the what you think of dynasties, if you think about the various English kings and their family fighting over who's going to be in charge, you would have competing dynasties. Because let's say John Doe was king of England and he died without leaving a successor. Clearly, you might have one set of families saying, okay, well, it's my right to be king. You have another set saying, no, it's my right to be king because of our quote unquote lineage and all of this different things. So you have competing families, competing entities, fighting for not fighting when necessary, but competing for the same set of ability to govern. Because even if you look back, even before our political state, you would have had the Paul Higgses of the world, which is, I think, Ralph Higgs's uncle. You would have had the Harold Robinsons of the world, which is my great-grandfather, my father's father. You would have had the Hilly Ewins of the world, who is the father of the current premier, as well as the father of the Honorable Gold Ray. So even before we started ministerial government, if you go back, you would see the linkages. And now the only difference between how you would have certain persons having an opportunity to be more in the forefront is because you got to remember the electoral system only opened up years later in terms of being wide, because like for provost per se, you would only have one seat coming out of provost. So only one family could be it. But now you would see that like the families in the bite, now we have a bite thing. Like they might have had persons who might have been vying for an opportunity to be the representative of provost, but might have been outmaneuvered by some other families. You know what I mean? So only the stronger move forward, and then as you open it up more, so you are likely to see more of that going forward, because again, politics is about votes, and votes is about large families. So persons who have a large family are more likely to garner the support of individuals. Say, okay, well, if I bring in 150 votes before I even go campaign, that's something that would entice a party or a person or whatever to put themselves forward, because they're closer to getting a victory.
But one of the things is that, just to add this and let you continue, when I even look at the history of the PDM and after Jaggs's death, you had Oswald Skippings, who became the youngest chief minister of the TCI, and after they on to the second election, that's when he failed. He failed at the polls. He lost at the polls. That's when you had Norman Sanders, who came on. And then you had Bobs Francis, and there was a commission of inquiry. And within that time, you had the late Clement Howell, who became the leader of the PDM. And God rest his soul, had he not died, he was, poised to become the leader of the Turks and Caicos Islands, of course, under, a PDM administration. So for me, it's only because of his death in '87. Remember, he was the leader. That was the leader who was actually going to be taking the PDM into the general election. Because remember, after he died, then again, Skippings took over the leadership, and he came back in '88, and he won the election. So for me, and I totally respect your opinion, sir, because I was going to go back to the issue with regards to the Bible when we spoke about David and his sons, where there was that tugging, and as to who should have been king once David, even to the point where they tried to, there was a coup against David, by his son Absalom. But there was always that fight as to who was going to take the throne from David. Even when we look at with Solomon, that was another issue with Solomon, with Jeroboam and Rehoboam. And so, but I'm saying that to say this, that when it comes back to, with regards to political dynasties, I kind of have my reservations on that, and I use that simply because of my experience of actually coming into politics.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, let me give you guys my feelings on it.
Oh boy.
I do believe that we have political dynasties here in the Turks and Caicos because, in my reasoning, looking at the definition that I gave, and even looking at what Jamell added in terms of holding on to power, for the majority of my life, I'm 34, the majority of my life, it has been the same persons and the same names and the same families over and over. So for me, that definitely constitute as dynasty.
Because coincidence.
Could be. I'll couple more questions. I'd love to see whether they come.
It might be because I do agree with Jamell that sometimes we look up to our parents and we want to emulate them.
I agree with that.
And I can also see where you come from. So this is going to be interesting. Yes. Now, Turks and Caicos, we also want to hear from you. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, do we have political dynasties here in the Turks and Caicos? And are they good or bad? Have they been good or bad for the Turks and Caicos? The number to call is 941-8550. Once again, 941-8550. Okay. So,
Anyone?
Okay, I would say, Mr. Taylor.
Hey,
I need you. Yes, I am.
Shit, it's fair, man. Just because he's
Jamell,
a former representative,
No, go ahead. Now, you said that in terms of your political career, that family wasn't a major influence.
Right.
And it would be argued that you're a part of a dynasty. So how do you think that influenced you, even if it may not have been the major or, this is the reason because my uncles have done it or, before me?
Right. Well, I have always been attracted to the ideology and philosophy of the PDM, and that's by the late James Alexander Joseph McCartney, Jags. And as a young boy growing up in Turks and Caicos, Grand Turk, it was really something to have hold on to. There was a kind of a hope. There was a kind of an organization that was there to always lend a helping hand. An organization that was there to speak on your behalf, to represent you if you felt like you were marginalized or disenfranchised, and that's how it has been even growing up as a young man. And and it was strange because I remember as a little boy back in 1976, we were the victims of a fire. Our home was actually destroyed. We lived right there on the high school road, and back then, I remember as a little boy, when they had the election. And I remember this. I always remember Baba Jaggi because I used to go out to, of course that's my family. It is.
I say not.
Jags and my father are first cousins, brothers and sisters, children. But I remember this person who used to. They just drove throughout the town. It was like Junkanoo couldn't stop. And as I grew into a young man. There were things that I learned more about the party and about Jags's legacy. Of course, in 1980 when he died, I was a young cub, dressed in my green with on March when they had his funeral on the parade. But I remember when I cast my first X in the militia building, and it was for the PDM, and after just knowing PDM, that's what it was all about for me.
So it was about the party and what they stood for. Right. That is what drew you
but
in.
But now, when I became, a young man and I came to a place where I wanted to go into politics, the person who I actually contacted was someone who was always affiliated with young people. Persons wouldn't believe it. And the first and I was like, who am I going to call? I mean, I didn't know. I was like, who am I going to go? Who am I going to talk to? I don't know. And the person who I actually called was Charlene Cartwright Robinson.
Okay.
That was the person I called.
Okay.
And she was like, really? Are you serious? Because we had always known each other from the Baptist, community, and she was always there with young people, and so there was somebody I could have basically reached out and identified with, and that's where the process went.
Okay.
And so when I came on, there were persons who were open arms.
Okay.
And that's where it went from.
All right. Okay. Now, Jamell, since you want a question, let me just ask you. You obviously feel the opposite of Dwayne right now. You will say that there are political dynasties.
Right.
Now, do you?
So for the first question, yeah.
How do you feel they have impacted the Turks and Caicos Islands, especially over the last 40 years, in your opinion? Have they been good, bad, a bit of both?
I think the effect of political dynasties per se, it I wouldn't call it good or bad directly related to them, but I know a lot of the good that's happened was mainly because it was Turks Islanders driving the change in the country. So that's where a lot of the good come from. Now, the side effect of political dynasties is that what we gotta realize is when we were starting out in '76, and even before then, because we would have had the state council and just basically quote unquote all independent candidates back then when we were selecting our representatives, because we didn't have a party system in place.
That's right.
What we would have had is that persons who would have had minimal access to government resources, because we didn't have a lot, because again we were under Jamaica, then we were under the Bahamas, then we finally became a proper crown colony, and ain't nobody was checking for Turks. So resources were limited. So what political dynasties could cause, and would have happened in a number of cases, was that the limited resources that were available would be directed to specific persons. So depending on who was the administrator or the person next to the administrator, they could dictate where the resources would go. So if it's only $10 in the country, and they're just giving a low number, then if I could get 5 of that 10 to help my family or my children, that's how it's going to go. Because if you think about the evolution of just something as simple as scholarships, we would have only had like 5 scholarships from Britain, like way back in the day.
Yeah.
Who do you think is likely going to get that?
Yeah.
Some random school, some random person's child, or the child of someone who's an administrator. Now, mind now, the difference between the acumen for academics might be similar, but if only 5 there, somebody got to get it. You know what I mean? And as much as persons might love the country, they love their family equally. Yeah. So you're talking about directing resources. So it would only have been like to the latter tail, and just talking about giving the scholarships example to flashes of the latter tail of the Taylor years, meaning Derek Taylor's administration, when we were up to at least $4 million per, and then the boom with the Mizik years, where we kind of went crazy with scholarship monies that everybody at that time would have gotten access to that education. Now, why I pinpointed the education specifically is because if my mom and your mom are the same age, my mom gets to go to school, come back, and your mom has to stay and do whatever remedial jobs that's there. My mom is going to be ahead of you for her professional career, meaning the next generation, I as her son is gonna be in a better position than you as that person's daughter, just for the simple fact that my mother was able to get some extra schooling. So it might not have been a 4-year college, but it might have been a nursing certificate. It might have been an opportunity to become a qualified teacher or whatever profession you would have gotten a head up, right? So eventually, generation on generation, where you mentioned about having just one particular family representing a particular area for a long time, the opportunity would have been, well, if I'm the doctor in my community, clearly you're going to want a smart person, quote unquote, with book knowledge, be your next representative.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So whereas the person who had the most skillful speaking ability before we were all had opportunities to the limited education access would have been the choice. Then the professional would have been the next choice. So now we're only finding that other persons through from the end of the Taylor years through the Mike Music years, you're only finding now that persons all of us having access, from young, old, everybody had an opportunity to go to school between that 2001 to now. So everybody feels they're in a position to be a representative. Hence why you would see all these persons joining the political fray now, because they're then like, well, I've been to the same schools you've been to. I've done the same things you've done. Why I need you to represent me when I can represent just as good as you? You know what I'm saying? So everybody confident now. That's why everybody
we have a caller. Hi, caller, you on the air?
Hello.
Yes, hello. Hello, caller. Okay, I think we may have lost that caller. Caller, maybe you can try again, or anyone else out there who wants to weigh in on this discussion. 941-8550. Okay, Jamell. Here's what I have to say with regards to, I agree with you.
I have to agree with that.
What I was seeing there is the pattern that it's like a vicious cycle, for lack of a better word, or it has been a vicious cycle, because many people in Turks and Caicos would argue that until very recently, only certain families have been given opportunities, been benefiting from like tertiary education, all that type of stuff. So in my opinion, I definitely feel that we do have political dynasties, but I don't think that they're necessarily good for the country.
Wow. I just remember a situation.
Before you, let's take this caller. Hi, caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yes. Good day. I'd like to address my question directly to Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, no disrespect intended. How come, is it been 3 years, the Taxi Association has been honoring the national hero of the Turks and Caicos Island? How come the People's Democratic Movement have never taken the initiative and joined hands with the taxi drivers and building a national hero float? Mr. Taylor, most of the young people heard about Mr. McCartney, but there is no movement from the People's Democratic Movement that is educating the young people about Mr. McCartney. I believe that it's time that the PDM open up and see that they have to educate the young people and educate those who come to reside amongst us of our first national hero, and versus only hearing about him during election periods or the heat of elections moments. I also would like to say that the PDM should be looking at this present moment in time, where you have summer. I see a lot of young children on the streets looking for jobs. I see a lot of young children in need of jobs. I believe that the People's Democratic Movement should create an avenue that they can reach out to them young children and touch them and help save them. And also that should be given the opportunity to adults to show them that there is a different style of leadership within the PDM. I believe creating avenues to reaching out and touching people, it touch the heart, and by the election polls, the people will speak. But it must come from strong and firm leadership within the PDM. And that's something that I'm not bashing the leader, but it's something that I will hit her on strong, because she has to wake up and see what the people are saying. Mr. Taylor, within this general election, I truly believe that it's going to be a coalition government, because people are tired of the both political parties. Why I might support the PDM government, why I might understand, but what about those who don't understand? What about the young men who are looking for opportunity? And that's why I've always said to the PDM,
hi, caller.
The PDM headquarters cannot win an election.
Hear you, but you're kind of, I would say, you're off of what you're straying away from the topic that we're discussing right now. But we thank you for your contribution, no doubt. It's kind of moving away from the whole idea of
dynasties. Going left, man.
Yeah. So, so yes. So, Dwayne, you were about to share a story before.
Actually, here again, mind you, and I am led to believe that the.
Okay. Oh, we have another caller. Hi, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I'm here again. I want to just remind you all that the first where they had an outbreak of scholarships was in Jake McCartney time.
Okay.
Yeah, in 1977, just after PDM went, that's when you had children from each island all over the Turks and Caicos were going all across in the States, all over the Caribbean. You had over 100 of scholarships that were given out in Jake McCartney time. That even you have a lot of the children who went out there, got their schooling and never returned.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, caller.
Now, concerning the dynasty.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. We have Charles Missig and Gustavus Lightprint and them. You had the older folks. They were there that time. They gave away the land. But you have the younger sons who came and give the rest of it away.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, caller. Okay. So obviously, I would say to summarize that caller's feelings, it seems as if he thinks political dynasties are not good for the Turks and Caicos. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, caller. Okay.
Mrs. Isaac, I think this show calls for 2 hours. But what I want to say, this is a very interesting show. But I agree with Mr. Robinson to a certain extent when you spoke about administrators and how they were in position, because I remember years ago you had the Francis, you had the different families and they were the persons who actually had a hold on power back then. And so, like you said, while persons would have liked country, they liked their families. And so they took care of their families.
Well,
this is hard for me, man.
By the end of this, you chief would just say you agree dynasties like this,
No, because
speak freely,
because you would have thought, because when I look at persons who might have had families in government, if you speak to some of them, they would have had a different opinion. Where you would have thought that, okay, oh well, then that's your brother, that's your uncle, man, and so your uncle hooked you up, your uncle took care of you, blah 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 blah, and so whereby you would have even an uncle or brother who would have said, hey, listen, man, I want you to come in this too, I want to pull you up and stuff like that. So if you would have spoken to some persons would have had passed.
I hate to interrupt you again, but we have another caller.
Yes.
Hi, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, I'm sitting here enjoying this afternoon show. And
thank you very much.
Add some information to the show. I'm looking at a document that speaks to the end of 1960. And these were some of the persons who were elected to the House of Assembly at the time. Some of the surnames: Basin, Francis Smith, Mills, Ford, P.S. Higgs, which is the Higgs out of Bottle Creek, and now Mr. Ralph Higgs is partaking. I think that's his grandson. Walking Musgrove, Lightborn, and then at the end of 1964, that's when Wood, based in France again, Simon Taylor, Cotton again, Robinson, Lightborn. At the end of 66, you had surnames came based in Francis, Simon Taylor, Stubbs, Hicks, Gardner, Robinson, and like one. I'm trying to fast forward and go back.
Okay.
And the reason why is because we tend to speak to politics in this country from 76 going forward. But dynasties actually existed prior to this period. And
there you go.
we're now seeing second, third generation persons who are connected to those who were elected at the time. While I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, one would have anticipated that in the year 2003, evolve past just those surnames in the country where so many have been trained in such diverse areas, and their contributions can come to the country and from many and any angle. We thought we would have evolved beyond this. We've locked out.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. And actually, that was going to be my next question. With regards to both gentlemen, I'd like both of you to weigh in on this. So it's being said that voters in the Turks and Caicos are moving away from party allegiance and paying more attention to candidates as individuals. Now, do both of you believe that political dynasties are receiving the same treatment? Are they on their way out, or are we still?
I can take that first. You want a piece of that? I'll take it first.
Right. We have another caller. Okay, caller, you're on the air. Hello, caller. Okay, I think we lost that caller. So Jamell, you can go ahead.
So.
You should let me answer that first.
You might have a different opinion.
I want to hear what Jamell has to say first.
I believe. Listen, and this goes back to the abundance of opportunities we would have had within the last 20 years, and not more people having the opportunity. So really, quote unquote reverence or respect level for certain families and who would have been, and
Jamell, I have to interrupt you again. Hello, caller, you on the air.
I've been trying for the last half an hour to get people to action, man. Keep me off the air today. I don't understand it.
Well, it's a good thing you got through.
Go ahead,
All right, where do I begin? Excellent question, Mr. Sabrina Isaac. Political dynasties. Yes, we've had political dynasties in this country. They've been there before 76. They've been there from the time we started having any sort of representation in this country. Some of the names the caller called in the previous call was on point. And at the end of the day, what is the bad thing about dynasties is that when dynasties pick and choose who to empower in a country based on the last name and based on the goal they have to keep the dynasty going. And while some people may not want to admit it, they may not have a family member that contacts. Yes, my uncle hooked me up. Yes, my brother hooked me up. But they sure can't come out and say, my uncle or brother didn't help me. Okay. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, I would say this, when it comes to dynasty, the question that I always say, as much as we as a country try so hard to be different from the United Kingdom, there are so many things that we adopt from them. Because there are two houses in the United Kingdom. One is the House of Commons and one is the House of Lords. And historically speaking, there was one house called the House of Lords. Yeah. And the House of Lords was passed on from father to son, or from mother to daughter. It was by land and inheritance. And that is the kind of mentality that political dynasties have. TCI is not unique to it. You had the Birds and the Native. You had many families around the Caribbean that ruled the Caribbean countries for years and years. So one of the things that I would like to say is that politics in TCI, I believe, is evolving from political dynasties for two reasons. One, more of us are being educated. They always say, you want to keep the people fooled and blind, you want to educate them. Well, my baby can read, and a lot of people's babies can read. Two, the political dynasties have been the nursery bed for a lot of nepotism, a lot of blind eye politics, and a lot of passing on certain traditions that don't necessarily work in the interest of the country. Finally, the reason why I believe political dynasties have run its course in this country is because you need more than your last name to secure a seat
in the People's House of Assembly. Turks and Caicos people want the House of Assembly to become the House of Commons. So anybody running for office, you better know that this generation is going to vet you. We are going to investigate you. We are going to listen to the words that you're saying. If you're not speaking sense, you better stand down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, caller.
Okay, I yield to the caller.
Okay, if you yield to the caller, then I can answer
that.
Yeah,
you can go. Yeah. I yield to the caller, endorse that.
You know, I heard the caller's very interesting narrative, but I'm coming back to the place, and this is just my opinion. I would like to say that while there might have been persons who would have gone along the lines where they, he used the word nepotism, right? And that is a very strong word, but a word that is accommodating because you've had that, in systems of government. I'm saying that to say this because you had someone like Honorable Derek Taylor. Derek Taylor was always identified, and even Jags was always identified, and I think that's why we've always called the PDM the People's Party. I'm not saying that they haven't strayed away at some point from the ideology and the philosophy. When you look at Jags was always a people's person. It didn't matter who you were, where you come from, what you looked like. It didn't matter. As long as you were a Turks and Caicos Islander and you needed help, you needed empowerment, that's who Jags was. And so coming back, I think Derek to some extent kind of taken on that kind of a persona because I would only say this because I've heard people said that, and even persons from his party, that he looked at more for the PMPs rather than the PDMs. And I think that it's indicative of any government that or persons who have been elected to office. You're not going there to help a certain set of people. You're going there to be a government for the people and of the people and by the people, which means that you ought to be able to cater to everyone, regardless of your political affiliation.
So
now I hear what you're saying.
Skiffins?
No, I use
just get it,
Derek because Derek was
just
Now I hear what you're saying, but what you said that people would say about Derek Taylor, that persons in his party, that he helped the PNP more than he helped the PDM.
Right.
I've heard PNP say the same thing when their governments are in administration.
Right.
So I guess
you
can look at it,
both ways.
Well, they should be helping Turks
Islanders,
period. So that's the best thing.
Yeah, they should be helping Turks and Caicos Islanders.
But Jags, unlike anyone, has always been the person who people looked at as being a people's person.
Okay, yeah, that is true.
He's the first people's person.
I would say, that is true. We can't deny that.
Reasonable.
Now, I think we have another call. Okay, call you on the air.
Good afternoon. Very interesting conversation. I didn't have any intention of calling, but the caller before the last, I guess he promptly inspired me to call
okay.
him. And I would just like to thank him for sharing those valuable information. One of those persons, those Gardners he mentioned, I believe is one of my Uncle Oscar Gardner. And it's yes, interesting. In 2003, I ran as an independent candidate, right? But not because of him, right? And finally, I would just like to say this: the premier said to me the other day, he don't know where my political ideology lies or where the case may be. But I would answer by saying this: I will always be thankful and grateful to God for the example. His father, the Honorable Hilly Ewan Sapp, right? And as a result, I will always, if I have the opportunity to vote for one of his children, I will do it because it's something. It is beautiful. It's a vision that the late Jags McCartney shared, and it's something he did towards me. What to say, a true statement, right? And basically, he didn't have to do it, but it's just that I'm always be grateful for that. And I will always be grateful, right, for the example the Honorable Jags McCartney set, right. Those kind of acts, I think we're supposed to build on it. And for those examples, the example they set, very, 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 very beautiful. Thanks and bye.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. Okay, well, we have barely scratched the surface here
I tell you what.
with this topic. So I definitely believe that this will be one that we have to revisit very soon, maybe next week, but we'll see.
Mrs. Isaac,
yes.
I don't think that one of the things is that I didn't answer the second half of that. Persons moving away from political dynasties, right?
Oh, yeah. You just started.
One of the things is that, and this is why I said, this is the uniqueness of my, this is why I'm saying that there was, I don't think there, in my view, political dynasties. While I agree with what you said in terms of the electorate being educated and, having a better foothold on how they can basically represent themselves rather than having someone represent them, and also look at themselves as a prodigy of being ambassadors. At the end of the day, it's not like, okay, John is a name, or Peter is a name, all of a sudden, hey, I am a name as well. I look at it from this aspect that persons have that right, democratically and constitutionally, to plot its own course and destination, and I think that they can be free to do that. I think the problem is, and what has been, is that in many regards, in some regard rather, some people might feel like persons shouldn't do it, or I would love to have everybody on my team. Right, I would love to have Jamell on my team. I would love to have Mrs. Isaac on my team if I'm going to battle. I want to have a winning team. But the persons, I think the problem is having to grapple with opinions and respecting people's opinions. And the fact that, until we come to that place and level of maturity, and then we begin to accept each other and understand that the world is not about one man's opinion.
Yeah,
the world is about everyone's opinion, how they sit around the table and how they see life. And that's the bottom line for me.
Right. In summary, we are moving away from political dynasties.
That's what I keep saying. I don't say it's a dynasty. I think, listen, to liberate a man is to educate a man.
Yes.
And I don't think it has to do with necessarily dynasty. It has more to do with your narrative of thought in terms of the ideology and philosophy of how you see life and how you want to be sized up and how you want to live.
I hear what you're saying now, and I think this definitely needs another hour because I have a question, but I'll leave it for my final comments.
I love this.
Jamell,
this is very interesting.
What are your final comments?
Well, my final comments is that I would go back to the first question. I do believe political dynasties exist. We have several families connected, and it's across party lines as well, because we have several in the music family, which is my father's family. We would have had Uncle Clarence, who would have been a long time PDM member, as well as various PNPs. On the other side, you would have the Ewing family, who would have had both PNPs and PDM selected. So you know what I mean. So that exists in my mind. The evidence is there. You know what I mean, about political dynasties within the TCI. And I think we have to move to a place where everybody, and I think we're getting there, as persons have the opportunities to show who they are. And, you're going to have persons from those various lineage still involved, because at the end of the day, if a person is good and willing to fight for you, you're not going to worry about, okay, what is his or hers background per se, as long as they're true to their mission and true to the TCI as a whole.
Yes.
But there's just going to be more options available rather than, so it's about the deconstructing some of the institutions and the strongholds persons have on opportunities. Now, just like we have political dynasties, we would have had civil servant dynasties as well, because there's certain persons or certain families within the civil service that dominates. So even if we talk about political dynasties, the next level down in terms of who gets opportunities within the public service, so that's all structure, and those feed into the political dynasties, because you can dictate who does what. So it is a reality. I'm sure we're moving on from it slowly but surely. As more persons get educated, more persons get opportunities to basically show who they are. You know, the person's just going to say, okay, well, I could do this just how so-and-so did it before. Mm-hmm. I have the same amount of experience as this one had when they came in the game. So I think it's just about us being more confident in ourselves as a nation and building more self-esteem. So it's all good. It is what it is, but we moving ahead and moving forward.
Well, that's a good note to end on, even though I think we definitely need to consider having a part 2.
Yes.
But gentlemen, I thank both of you for spending this hour with me. And to the callers, we thank you for participating today in the Patriot Hour. And join us again next Thursday at 1 p.m. as we have another episode of the Patriot Hour. Thank you, Turks and Caicos.
All right.
Good morning this morning. The TCI Patriots presents 4 for 40, a 4-part series that looks back at the last 40 years in the development of the Turks and Caicos Islands since the introduction of ministerial governance. Each Thursday for the month of August, guests on the Patriot Hour will reflect on each decade from 76 to 2016, which will culminate in a 2-hour special program on Tuesday, 30th of August, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., where a vision for the next 40 years will be discussed. So, keep it locked. Lord, I love the sun and sea.